Hello and welcome to this edition of the Deep Dive Perspective. Gaza has unveiled and revealed and exposed so many truths, not least of all the truth that there is something called a Zionist Arab, that there are Zionists who are leading many of the Arab nations, and they've been laid bare in terms of their actions and their lack of action in terms of helping and saving their fellow Arab and Muslim brothers. And it's been a real hall of shame. But perhaps the most obvious example is the United Arab Emirates. Probably the worst example of all in terms of normalization with Israel and openly supporting the genocide. Not only that, they are also quite happy to be the front man in the genocide in Sudan. What is it with these dictator monarchies and these Arabs that they cannot do what their people actually want, which is to support the Palestinians, to fight for the oppressed, and to also probably side with the axis of resistance in the region, which is fighting Zionism? With me in the studio, I've got two fantastic guests. My old friend, Dr. Ali Al-Kabani, an Egyptian journalist of some note and experience, and my new friend, Brother Ishan Safar-Innajad, who has given us a great appraisal in recent times as well. Thank you for joining us, Ihsan.
It's a pleasure to be
here. And thank you for joining us, Dr. Ali Kabani. I'll start with you, Dr. Ali, in the studio. How deep is the Arab betrayal, the Arab leadership's betrayal of Palestine, and how has it manifested?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Actually, the position of all Arab countries is shameful. No single Arab country tried to help the Palestinian people or to stop the genocide which was taking place in Gaza for nearly 2 years now. It is not only shameful, but some of them are traitors because they are not helping their Palestinian brothers, but they are helping the Israelis and the Zionist entities to implement their genocide plan in Gaza and their vulgar action in the West Bank. So, for example, the United Arab Emirates, as you mentioned, is helping Israel 100%. First, but what they are doing in Sudan to try to divide Sudan and make Egypt busy with their southern border so they cannot have two wars at the same time on the Gaza border and then Sudan border. The other thing, in Aden, United Arab Emirates and their gangs in southern Yemen are having actually a military base, and they are using the drones and that base to threaten the Houthis of Yemen and to stop their attacks on the Zionist entity. So they are really helping the Zionist entity in both or in all fronts. Defend them, trying to threaten Egypt, trying to threaten the Houthis in Yemen, and helping them by supplying them with all the weapons and the food supplies they need through the Gulf area.
Ihsan, I'll let you come in on the same question. What's your overview of, if you like, Zio-Arab betrayal of the Palestinian people?
Well, it's very important to understand that these countries, they don't really have good policy for their future, right? They're not really strong. So what they have been doing for the past, I don't know how many years, is that they have tried to define themselves in the sphere of influence of United States and align their objectives in a way that would align with the objective of the empire. So, for example, when you see Sudan, the case with Sudan, the UAE has a sort of carte blanche to do whatever it wants. Why is that? Well, when Syria was lost, many analysts talked about how Sudan can be used as an alternative route in order to deliver weapons to Palestinian resistance fighters and resistance fighters in Lebanon. Well, now with the complexity of the situation in Yemen, in Sudan, it has become much harder. So in that sense, UAE is now basically creating problem for the axis of resistance in one aspect. The brilliant doctor talked about the situation in Yemen as well. They have both placed a radar system in southern parts of UAE in order to monitor the movements by Ansar Allah. And obviously that radar can also be used for other things as well. But that also is used in order to help the Zionists. And, you have the joint collaboration between Azerbaijan and Israel on the project of creating this corridor, which will mean that they are going to invade, launch an attack on Armenia and its sovereignty. Well, in that front, you also see UAE having a strong presence. And final thing is that if Iran would ever want to take control of the Strait of Hormuz in order to dictate battle and make things complicated for the imperialist, it needs to have control of these three strategic islands that exist in the Persian Gulf. And who is there to disrupt that flow? Well, you see the same culprit, UAE. So in that sense, you see UAE really being everywhere fighting against the resistance. It's sort of like that joke that I don't know why Al-Qaeda never fires a single bullet towards Israel. Why is it that Al-Qaeda is more concerned with killing Muslims rather than, supposedly launching a global jihad against, the empire?
So many fascinating points and so many areas to cover. This is literally a regional struggle, which is very much existential. It's not like the regional war has to come. It's already there in one shape or form, it seems, according to the networking you guys have just done. But let's carry on focusing on the UAE as our vehicle for seeing this kind of betrayal of the Palestinians. I picked up on one bit of news where when Yemen blocked the Bab el-Mandeb to Israeli vessels and to American ships, it was the UAE which first gave access to its ports for alternative routes in terms of food supply and other cargo when Eilat port essentially became dysfunctional. It was virtually bankrupt and knocked out. So that idea of supporting Israel isn't just in terms of, for instance, the airspace they might provide or the base for naval vessels or the many things that have been mentioned. It goes to actually helping Israel practically function, doesn't it?
The role of the United Arab Emirates and the Sheikh of Abu Dhabi is very clear. He is complicit in the genocide which is happening in Gaza. He is aiding and helping the Zionist entity by all means, militarily, economically, and as you said, he made all their ports under the service of Israel. Mohammed bin Zayed is an agent of the Zio-American Pact. He signed the Abraham Accord, and he tried and still trying to convince all the Gulf countries to sign that accord and to normalize relations with the Zionists. So his role is very clear, and his role is really trying to divide Sudan, to divide Yemen, to divide even Egypt, and to help so he's a clear client of the Zionists. He takes their dictates and he does whatever they want. And as you said, because Houthi closed the Bab el-Mandeb, he established this military base in Aden to try to stop Ansarullah from doing that, and also preparing for a Zionist American war against Yemen. So he is preparing himself to serve that pact from the base of Aden. That's why now there is a resistance group, Yemeni resistance group in the southern Yemen, to try to end the occupation of United Arab Emirates of southern Yemen. And I want to add just one thing
please.
For Al-Qaeda not attacking any Israelis or any Zionists. Al-Qaeda is a Zionist-made organization. The Zionist entity trained, provided Al-Qaeda with weapons and all the information. Because how can Al-Qaeda move from Afghanistan to Iraq to Syria with all their heavy military weapons? They don't have, as we all know, an air force. So somebody is moving their artillery and heavy equipment from one place to another to serve their purposes. And it's very clear it's the Zionists, because they never attacked Israel, they never attacked American interests, they only attack and kill Arabs and Muslims.
So, Hassan, there used to be, or still probably is, the peripheral doctrine that the Israelis had, where they would buy off even those nations which were very far away from them as a way of creating a first line of defense. In the old days, Iran and the Shah of Iran was part of that, and so was Azerbaijan. Of course, the revolution did away with that in Iran. Iran is now the primary protagonist, if you like, or the bulwark of resistance against Israeli expansionism in the region. But the likes of Azerbaijan, the UAE, Egypt perhaps as well, and Saudi Arabia, they're all actually still part of that doctrine, aren't they? They're still very much integrally a defense force for Israel, a first line of defense.
Well, yes, absolutely. And things have only worsened throughout the years. The UAE, for example, is now doing everything in order to help the Zionist entity. At this point, you can, in a way, say that UAE's relationship with Israel is even stronger than European countries, some European countries, not all of them, but for example, let me give you another example. UAE is building an airport in this sort of remote island called Socotra. Apologies, I'm not really good at pronouncing Arabic words. But that island is close to Yemen. And they are doing this in order to, monitor the movements of Ansar Allah, which would later on make it much harder. And this will be much harder for them to carry out their operations to curtail the ambitions of the Zionist entity. And, next rounds of attacks on Yemen might not be as unsuccessful as they have been in the past. And where to look at when it comes to, the treachery and the treason that we see. But when we actually go deeper, we understand where these people come from. We're talking about people who can't really establish strong industries in their own country, because that requires some level of intelligence which Mohammed bin Zayed and Mohammed bin Salman, they truly lack. They are not strong enough, they're not smart enough to create a nuclear program, and the West wouldn't allow them. So what they do is that they have become like military states. For example, when you see UAE's place in terms of gold exports, in 2024, UAE was the fourth largest gold exporter in the world. Where do they get their gold from? Well, the mines in Sudan. So rather than building industries, creating businesses, and creating indigenous industries, what they have done is that they have completely become military states, and their growth and their expansion is only limited in that aspect, not anything else. And just one final thing to wrap this up. When you look at the 2007 WikiLeaks documents that were published, you see Mohammed bin Zayed actually hates Muslims. This is not a joke. He said that Middle East is not California, in a sense that free elections shouldn't be held in Middle East because, and this is his assertion, that if you allow the Muslims in the region to vote, they will all choose Muslim Brotherhood, Hamas, Hezbollah. So election doesn't work for the region. And what the West should pursue is to actually continue the status quo and support the despots and the dictators. And he basically talks about a mass indoctrination in order to, the way that he perceives it, to de-radicalize the people of in the region whose only ambition is to resist the imperialist agenda of United States.
Well, I know Socotra Island, for instance, was very much center ground for Israelis to create a base there, and the southern part of Yemen was very much under the influence of the UAE and Saudi Arabia. They kind of fell out. They couldn't get their act together, and they still haven't been able to. But I think that's what maybe Hassan was alluding to as to a bigger danger for Yemen, that if they were able to get sort of mercenary forces, other forces to land there and create ISIS forces, in fact, as well. And I think this is an important point, because the other thing I picked up from that was that ISIS were present in Yemen, and they were financed and backed by these parties. However, what's also interesting is that UAE, the Saudi Arabia, and Qatar have this sort of weird rivalry as well, with the Qataris backing the Muslim Brotherhood, which is like more the dominant force in Syria and perhaps even in Egypt. But with the UAE, they have a strong clash with the Brotherhood and the Qatar. So there are fault lines which have been created, because in the end, all of the money trails for these guys go back to Washington, Tel Aviv, and London. Yet here, I often see the UAE castigated by the Muslim Brotherhood, for instance, attacked by Qatar, and Qatar had its collisions with the Saudis. So internally, they seem to have this kind of strange bickering going on and lack of collaboration. But at the same time, they are all servants of America and Israel and Britain, I guess. Unpack that for me a little, about that relationship between those Gulf Arab nations.
You know, there is a competition among them about who control the Gulf. But more importantly, there is a competition with the relation with the United States to show the Americans who can help them better and who can be a better client to the American policy in the area, so America rely on them and depend on them. So we see when Qatar signed the military cooperation pact with the United States, after paying them $1 trillion in projects in America, bin Salman went to the Americans and he wanted a similar treaty, and he is ready to pay even $1.2 trillion. So this is the competition between them. They want American protection, and they want to serve the American interest to protect their thrones. As Donald Trump said in his first term before, without the American support and protection, the Saudi throne will not survive for 2 weeks. And then he said in a public speech, even for 1 week. So he humiliates them, but they still go begging him for protection, because of course they know they are not popular among their own people. And I always say the Arab, the rulers of the Arabs. I don't say the Arab rulers, because I really doubt that they are Arabs.
Right.
And they don't deserve to be Arabs, because they do everything against the interests of their own nations, against their own people, and on the contrary, to serve the enemies of the Muslim nation and the Arab nation. So, and again, we come for ISIS or Al-Qaeda. They created them to do their dirty work in all Arab and Muslim countries. So they use them in Afghanistan, they use them in Iraq, they use them in Syria. Now they are trying to use them in Yemen, and they are using them in Egypt. Moreover, they are using them in Gaza to get as if opposition groups to Hamas and the Jihad al-Islami. Actually, those are paid spies and paid traitors to do the dirty work of Israel after the truce which Donald Trump decided in Sharm el-Sheikh. So these tricks are now really obvious for all to see, and nobody believes that the Palestinians don't want Hamas, while Hamas and Jihad al-Islami are the only people who defending the Arab and Muslim nations against the Zionist expansion and invasion and the genocide.
Well, Ehsan, dwelling on this point a little further, the use of these kinds of proxy organizations, terrorist groups, militias, whatever you want to call them, they come in different shapes and sizes. So in Syria, the Muslim Brotherhood, the Syrian Muslim Brotherhood, is very close to whatever you'd call Al-Qaeda and ISIS and Jabhat al-Nusra. They seem to be all very mixed. In Egypt, they were Muslim Brotherhood was given power, and Dr. Ali will come in on this, I'm sure, later. They were given power under Morsi, and then it was withdrawn from them and handed back to the dictatorships, the military dictatorships. The Brotherhood seems to be, it seems to me, a mobile, divided unit, because even Hamas has links as Muslim Brotherhood.
They are Muslim Brotherhood.
They are Muslim Brotherhood, effectively. So is it that Qatar is using some elements of the Muslim Brotherhood and UAE is using other elements? How does that all work? Because they seem to be the joker in the pack and able to cause problems as and when they want, because the boots on the ground in terms of fighting, bombing, killing, and getting involved in wars seems to be other than the actual the actual Arab monarchs. They don't go and do the dirty work themselves, do they?
Well, let's just start with some other example. You see in Western media, when they talk about countries like Russia, Iran, China, they try to just use Putin said this, she said this, Khamenei said this, right? So it is a tendency within the Western media hemisphere propaganda machine to just boil down things to like one thing, right? As it turns out, like these countries have, multiple organizations and their structure is rather complicated. The same thing is true within Ikhwan al-Muslimin as well. Ikhwan al-Muslimin has different fractions. And we don't even have to talk about Ikhwan al-Muslimin as a whole. Even within the Palestinian branch of Ikhwan al-Muslimin, Hamas, Khalid al-Mash'al's perspective on the way that we should fight completely differs from Yahya Sinwar's vision, right? So this different perspectives exist within any organization, but it's very important to understand the nuance, as you mentioned. Let's go back to the case in Syria. For example, when Damascus fought, those who were following the news of Damascus collapsing or the terrorists coming to power, they understand that they read this, that the first terrorist group that actually went to Damascus, it was a terrorist group backed by UAE, but they later on sort of retreated and they gave the control to Abu Muhammad al-Jawlani, who now goes around calling himself Ahmad al-Shara, the leader of Al-Qaeda in Syria. So where does this come from? Well, it comes from the fact that these sort of Arab states that are backing different divisions within Ikhwan al-Muslimin, or like even terrorist groups inside the region, they receive a call from CIA, they receive a call from United States, and they are told, hey, buddy, you need to withdraw from this region. We have different plans for this region. And, many people talk about how during Sykes-Picot Agreement, they used rulers and pen in order to draw artificial borders between the countries of the region and separate them, divide and conquer policy. But they don't understand that the same thing actually exists even now. So United States has a vision for this region. They say, okay, let's not allow a power to become one of these countries to become really powerful. We have to create a balance between Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and United Arab Emirates. And the way that they do it is that they say, okay, UAE gets Syria, UAE doesn't get Syria, UAE gets Sudan, and they get Yemen. But Qatar gets Syria. And then we allow UAE to go to Azerbaijan, and we actually facilitate the a partnership in Azerbaijan, because that will create a potential conflict with Iran, and they already have a motivation based on the 3 islands that they claim are disputed between Iran and UAE. So once you understand that the CIA analysts have a very robust program for this region, and it basically boils down to this fact that they don't want even their client states to become powerful, because if they become powerful, then it means that they can resort into mutiny, which is the last thing that they want.
A fantastic analysis there, Dr. Ali. Feel free to step in on any of those. I kind of can't disagree with Ehsan on that one, but there has been another discernible trend with the UAE. They've been actively buying up ports. Ethiopia, Somalia, and even up in, I think, Egypt. There's talk of something in Egypt as well. And of course, Sudan, which we raised the issue, also has an interest level. And UAE are massively, of course, involved in funding the RSF, genocidal RSF, killing babies, children, on exactly the same game plan that Israel has done in Gaza. It's literally the same framework. So this allocation that Ehsan's talking about, duties in the region, how the Zayed Western Empire uses these puppet Arab leaders and divides their responsibilities. I will raise, before I move on and before I forget, I'll raise the fact that Turkey, Azerbaijan also have a massive role, though they're not Arabs, but they also are part of the same game, and the same sort of role that they play. And of course, Turkey has a massive brotherhood with Qatar. These two are the ones who are linked. And people don't pick this up. So the likes of Al Jazeera and all these other media, soft power channels, even the Turks, work around that, is also arguably part of the normalization of Zionism, is part of the support for Israel. So it's not just goods and products. There's also a kind of a domination of trade and the ports and control of those waterways. There's also this control of the soft power and the messaging and the way that the Arabs and the Muslims react to Israel, which also controlled by these forces. Do you think, am I wrong?
You are absolutely right, because Israel was near actually achieving their dreams of normalizing the relation with all Arab countries, especially the rich Arab countries in the Gulf, but practically all Arab countries from Morocco to Bahrain. And the only thing which stopped that dream happening was the axis of resistance led by Iran. So Iran became the arch enemy of the Zionist entity, and of the Americans. And we all know the history of the sanctions and nuclear program. Nuclear program is just an excuse to isolate Iran and apply the sanctions and all that. Because that nuclear program started at the time of the Shah, by the help and support of the Americans and the French. So that it is not new, and it was not invented or done or started by the Islamic regime in Iran. So it was used as an excuse. So of course they found that Iran is a power that Israel cannot defeat. So they launched the wars in 2006, 2008 on Hezbollah and Hamas in Gaza to try to break the axis of resistance. And when they failed actually to break up Hamas and Hezbollah, they said, okay, so the weakest thing is Syria, which is the link between Iran and the resistance power in Gaza and southern Lebanon. So let us attack Syria. They couldn't. And then they called their cronies and their agent, Ahmad al-Shara al-Golani, who is really part of ISIS.
Yes.
Yeah. And there was a $10 million prize on his head put by the Americans. So when this guy stole the rule in Syria, all the Arab countries supported him. And said because Bashar Assad was a dictator. Bashar Assad was typical ruler, like all other Arab rulers.
Yes.
They are all dictators. But I supported Bashar al-Assad because at least he is achieving a goal and helping the resistance and stopping against the Zionist invasion and expansion in the area. So if we are getting rid of Bashar Assad because he is a dictator, so we should get rid of Ben Salman, Ben Zayed, King of Bahrain, President of Egypt, all of the Arab rulers. There is no freedom in any of the Arab countries. So they managed to break the link between Iran and the resistance in Gaza and by changing the regime in Syria. And we saw the guy who fought the Syrian army did not move a gun against the Zionists when they expanded and invaded Syria and even bombarded the presidential palace and the Minister of Defense. He didn't do anything. On the contrary, he went to America asking for normalization with the Zionist entity. So, and begging the United States to lift the sanctions, which they will do without him begging. He is their man now, their agent, and Syria became a client state and will never help the resistance. So that is the problem. The Zionists are always planning for the future and putting alternative plans. If this fail, this one will succeed, and so on. And they are using, of course, their puppets in United Arab Emirates, in Saudi Arabia, and other Arab countries to implement their plans and help them get rid of the resistance in the area. I come to the Muslim Brotherhood. If you do fair and transparent election in any Arab country, the Muslim Brotherhood will win. Not that I would like that, because I think they need to mature politically before they reach the ruling. But in a free and transparent election, they will win. And it's ironic that we see a Muslim elected as a mayor of New York and a Muslim elected as a mayor of London, but no Muslim is allowed to win election in Muslim countries. And the all Arab regimes consider the Muslim Brotherhood as the enemy. And Egypt is fighting them, and Saudi Arabia is fighting them, and all of them, except Qatar, because Qatar have got a problem with the other Gulf states, and the Muslim Brotherhood will be their help in protecting Qatar from attacks from Saudi Arabia or United Arab Emirates.
How fascinating. It is very complicated. Most people don't even have a sniff of this kind of analysis when I see them talk about West Asia and particularly the Gulf Arabs. But where do you see this going now, Ihsan, in terms of the future of the Arab world? Let's forget about the Islamic Republic of Iran for a second, because that often gets excluded because they're Shia and because they're Persian. And the West has also invested very heavily in the sectarianism and the ethnicity to divide and rule in the region for many, many centuries. And they're doing it again through most of the Wahhabi ideology adopted by ISIS, adopted by Al-Qaeda, spawned through virtually every terrorist organization which belongs to the MI6 and the CIA. They all have this kind of hatred of Shias and Persians particularly, and of Sufis for that matter as well. There's this massive religious game that has gone on without a doubt.
Sorry, I will interrupt here.
Please, Dr.
Because everybody's saying that Arab countries in the Gulf and Egypt, they are Sunni and they are against the Shiite, and because Iran is Shiite and they want to expand Shias, that Iran becomes an enemy. That is a joke, because they are using this politically. When Abdel Nasser called for Arab nationalism, King Faisal of Saudi Arabia, the Sunni, went to the Shah of Iran, the Shi'i, and they established the Organization of Islamic Countries to fight Abdel Nasser, Arab nationalism. So the Sunni of Saudi Arabia went to the Shia of Iran to make a pact against the Arab nationalism of Nasser. And then when Abdel Nasser tried to support the military coup in Yemen in 1962, the Saudi Sunni fought Abdel Nasser and sought Shah military support to defeat the Egyptian army in. So this trick of Sunni-Shia, it is a joke, it's a trick. Again, it is a colonial term to divide the Arab and Muslim nations. And if it's not Shia Sunni, tell me why there is a problem in Sudan. They are all Sunni. Hamidti and Al-Burhan. So it is just a way, a political trick to divide the Ummah.
And of course, Palestinians overwhelmingly Sunni. Salafi,
and Iran is helping them.
And you could say that.
Hezbollah, the only Shia countries who are helping the Palestinian people against the Israeli genocide.
That's an important one for us to frame, because it's a central part of the soft war policy that the West has and the Zionists have to divide Muslims in that region. But Ihsan, where do you see things going in terms of a vision for the Arab world? I mean, we talked about all the negativity, and under the rule of these kinds of Arab leaders, the ones who are Zionists essentially, there's a continuation essentially of a puppet status, a society based on temporary material well-being, of course, via the oil. But in the long run, there's no infrastructure, there's no manufacturing base, there's no knowledge economy, there's no way that these nations could survive as nations in the long run, and there's no investment in that in a proper sense. So if the Americans pulled the plug, if the Zionists pulled the plug on these nations tomorrow, they'd be pretty much easy for anybody to overrun. Whereas I'll compare that to Iran, which has, in spite of the sanctions, has invested in the knowledge economy and have made great strides in all sorts of areas. The two things contrast to me, because how can you have sovereign independence in the long run and be Arabs, if you like, have an Arab identity which is truly sovereign and free, without investing in your own future?
Well, these people don't really think clearly. You can see the crazy ideas that every day Mohammed bin Salman comes up with as a part of his vision for 2030, 2025, 2050, and they have no root in reality. I've studied artificial intelligence and robotics for my master's degree. So many people come to me and they say, okay, what do you think Iran should do with regards to artificial intelligence? And they expect me to talk about AI. I take a different approach and I say, well, in order for us to build a strong AI industry, we need to first invest in our energy infrastructure, because AI is something very energy consuming. This was a very small example in order to explain to people why, when you want to invest in an industry, first you have to have the infrastructure base necessary for that. Every day there are extravagant ideas, crazy and in certain ways mesmerizing in terms of being a concept, like a concept art of a car, an sport car that you see in a magazine. But that concept will never get anywhere because it doesn't have the foundation. It doesn't have the infrastructure necessary. Any of these countries that you see throughout the Persian Gulf, they have fundamental problems. Qatar thinks that by creating a media empire in the form of Al Jazeera, it can extend its sphere of influence. UAE thinks that a strong military and having proxy groups in different countries can help it from its weak infrastructure. Saudi Arabia thinks that it's in a way hegemonic influence over the Islamic countries, and you can see that when we bicker about when is going to be the Eid al-Fitr in the Islamic countries, Saudi Arabia thinks that will solve its problems. But when you look at these different countries, you see that because of the fact that they don't have the infrastructure, for example, all that United States needs to do in order to destroy the media empire of Qatar is to do what they did to press TV, to Iran's press TV. Just ban them from being broadcasted on satellites. The difference is that Iran has a very strong space industry. So, in future, very soon, probably Iran will launch satellites into the geostationary orbit. Can the same thing be said about Qatar? With regards to United Arab Emirates, well, they spend a lot of money in different countries, but can they actually produce weapons? Well, they are weapons purchasers, and when an arms embargo will be imposed on UAE, they will be completely destroyed in terms of their capability in fueling fire in other countries in the world. With regards to Saudi Arabia, are the actions of Saudi Prince Mohammed bin Salman, who is de facto the king of the country, in basically arresting and torturing different princes in the country in order to rule the country with an iron fist. Is this something that can be basically preserved without the help of the Americans or the Zionists? Well, in every field that we look at in these different countries, you see that because the development has been very caricature-like, and they haven't invested in their infrastructure, and they don't really have a strong foundation, they will be very easy prey for Zionist entity, and they will become the easy prey in future, surely, if this is an impossible situation. I don't think that Zionists will be able to destroy Iran, but the only thing, the sad and the irony is in the fact that if Iran is destroyed, each and every one of these countries will be destroyed very, very easily, because then at that time they have served their purpose and they are no longer needed.
Fascinating. Dr. Ali, we're coming to the end of the show, so it'll be conclusive remarks from both of yourselves. The Iranians put forward the Hope Initiative as one way of getting the regional cooperation going. They've tried to do deals with Saudi. In fact, they have. The Chinese brokered a bit of a deal with Saudi. The Iranians clearly do put olive leaves out, but at the same time, they've got this asymmetric defensive strategy, which has forced them to be involved in that region. Undoubtedly, after the Saddam Hussein invasion of Iran and the 8-year war imposed with the backing of the West and the Russians and others and the Gulf countries. So, Iran is, most of its foreign policy has been based on what happened in that period, that 8-year war, ever since. But if these Zayed Arab leaders were to drop their allegiance, hope against hope, could they trust Iran to be a better partner? Because Iran has a knowledge economy. It said it wants to share that. It's willing to even collaborate in terms of nuclear, peaceful nuclear, programs to evolve the Arab world. It's talking about more trade. It's trying to build trade. It has done for several decades now. So it seems as though the resistance is coming from these Arab leaders for a regional resolution or a regional alliance between the Muslim nations, at least, and of course regarding Israel as the pariah, as the illegal entity that it is. Iran certainly wants that rapprochement, that coming together. Do you think it can happen?
I don't think it will happen, because the dilemma is those Gulf regimes have got an inferiority complex, that they have got low population and small countries, and they cannot compete with the bigger Arab and Muslim countries, and they feel threatened by them because they always think that they are after their oil wealth. So what do? Rather than strengthening themselves and having good relation with those countries, they are trying, or their policy and plan is to weaken those countries, right, like Iraq, Syria, Egypt, and Jordan, for example.
No.
They managed to, in their opinion, destroy Syria and Iraq for the time being until those countries are rebuilt and go back to their real position and strengths. It will take them some time. So they are trying now with Egypt, Sudan, and Jordan to do the same. So this is the inferiority complex, which is rather than strengthening yourself, you are trying to weaken what you perceive to be your enemies. And they found their protection in the Zio-American Pact. So they go for normalization, the Abraham Accords, and all these things, because they know that Israel is the enemy, but they know that they will never unite with Egypt or Iran against them. So they think they are a safe guard for them. So this is their countries and this is their mentality, and they know that they are on the power seats in their countries against the wish of their own people. So they have got two threats. Their own people are threatening them, and the big Arab countries are threatening them because they are going with the enemy against the interest of the Muslim and Arab nation.
And again, going back to the first part of our program, if they aren't protectors and real patrons of their own people, their nationals, how can they be a support for Palestinians? And why was anybody expecting them to help Gaza? And why should we be surprised with what they did around the whole Palestinian issue? Ehsan, your concluding remarks on a little crystal ball into the future for the Arab world. I mean, how do you think it's going to play out from here in the short term and maybe in the sort of the longer term?
Well, in the short term, I think if we look at the events and how they unfolded after the operation in 7th of October 2023 and Hamas's display of courage in defying the imperialist agenda in the region. If you look at the way that the events have developed, you see that there has been a shift in terms of perceiving Iran, the axis of resistance in the Western Hemisphere. So the question becomes, do the people of region lack the ability to do what the Westerners did in their country? Because when we talk about the protests, we don't see that many inside the region. Well, obviously, there's that fear of being arrested and the brutality of the police states in these countries. But the underlying effect on those people have been that many people don't really buy, who unfortunately bought into the notions and the propaganda that was being disseminated by the Western propaganda machine. They no longer buy into that schism of the Shia-Sunni divide or the ethnicities or things of that nature. Today, we see an influx in the reputation of someone like Sayyid Ali al-Husseini al-Khamenei. I was looking at a speech given by a very famous Sunni scholar, and he was saying, we consider the Iranian leader Ayatollah Khamenei as the leader of Islamic world. Yes, we do not agree with his fiqh, his theology, the way that he in terms of carrying out daily duties of a Muslim, we have difference of opinion, but he is now fighting the enemy and the imperialist agenda. So this has took an effect on the people in the region. In the long time, there is only one way that I can see events unfold, and that's instability in these countries, not in terms of, civil war in these countries, but I think that the population in these countries have been pushed too far for so long, and they might not tolerate it for much in the future, for too long in the future. So that's one thing. But I think that it's like that scene in Pinocchio, that cartoon. The puppet tries to go into the ocean and save his father, quote unquote, Geppetto, but because it is wood, it floats on the water. So what it does, it actually ties itself to a big, heavy weight in order to sink. And I think that based on the fact that you can see Spain taking serious steps and initiatives, adopting serious initiatives in order to basically confront the Zionist regime and the perspective of the people in the West, I think that these countries in the Persian Gulf, they have basically tied themselves into the fate of the Zionists, and they will surely sink as soon as the Zionist entity would be impeded. And you don't really need me to talk about that. You only have to go and listen to the economists of the Zionist entity to understand what an abysmal situation they are dealing with.
Well, thank you very much, Ihsan, for a really erudite and deep analysis. And Dr. Al-Kabani, a fantastic combination. I think anybody who really wants a deeper insight into what's really going on in the dynamics of West Asia and the Arab world in particular would do worse than watch this program over and over again, because there are so many nuggets there that people need to pick on. Thank you very much for joining me. And as far as those who dream about a united Arab world, there is the Caliphatists, they, in my estimation, are also funded by the same Anglo-Zionist empire. Those who dream of, perhaps empires, Arab empires or even Persian empires, all of this is rather delusional, to be fair. The reality is that, as Sheikh Imran Hussein puts it, Pax America dominates, but he feels that Pax Judaica has arrived. I don't see the difference between either, to be fair. They're just different changes of label for the same imperialist control. And if a people want dignity, and if they want their freedom, and they want true sovereignty, then they have to fight for it. No people have been given liberation by their oppressor and by the imperialists. It's something that you have to sacrifice for, and there are terms like striving, jihad, in Islam, in the real sense of the word, fighting for the oppressed and giving liberation to the Palestinian people first and foremost. Then, of course, what we've discovered in the program today is that those very same Arab leaders are just as bad almost with their own populations as they are with the way they've neglected Gaza and the Palestinians. If you just go and check the prison cells of Saudi Arabia and most of these nations, you'll find many, many innocent, in fact, thousands, tens of thousands of innocent political voices who are suppressed, murdered and tortured. We need to change this. This is not Islam. It's nothing to do with what the prophetic way was. We dream of a real, just, prophetic future in whatever shape it is, whatever political shape that is. And it certainly doesn't involve a Zionist entity, I think, remaining in the region, and doesn't involve with a Pax America or Pax Judaica dominating West Asia. Thank you for watching.